Well, guys, Uncle Dana said that what he thought was going to be the fight of the year turned out to be the domination of the year. We're talking about Israel Adesanya and Jan Blachowicz right now. What's up, Barnhill family? Welcome back to the channel. Guys, I am back. I apologize last week. I got caught in some weather here on the Gulf Coast. Nick held it down solo for us. But we're together now, and boy, oh boy, do we have a card to break down.
Yeah, you got back just in time for the big Fight Island Part 2, Part 1.
It was unbelievable. Yeah, the Part 1 of the second installment of Fight Island. And, I mean, we talked about this before. The main card itself was a little top-heavy.
Yeah.
But, boy, was the cream of the crop.
Yeah, as heavy as it gets.
Oh, my goodness. What a main event. I mean, let's just jump off right there. How freaking good is Israel Adesanya?
Well,
I mean, I know we both predicted him to win the fight, but not just in an utter domination of a performance like he did.
Yeah, I thought Paulo Costa's storm that Izzy would have to weather would last a couple of rounds. Turns out he came in with a very similar game plan to Yoel Romero, which is almost do nothing.
Yeah.
And then Izzy's just going to pick you apart, kind of concede the first round. I didn't see that happening. I thought what you thought. I thought Costa was going to come in and bring everything for the first couple rounds, and hopefully Izzy wouldn't be left standing. And I predicted a late stoppage for Izzy. I didn't think it was going to be an early stoppage. I mean, round 2.
Yeah. I mean, so when you think about how that fight was probably going to go in your mind, and I even told everybody that was watching it with us, I said, watch the first minute of this fight. Mm-hmm. This guy Costa is going to come across this cage, Usain Bolt style, sprint across this cage and try to take Izzy's head off.
Right.
That didn't happen. He didn't do the Yoel Romero sort of bizarre stand there and do nothing for 2 minutes. He did come and try to put some combinations together, a few punches. Dana White said he only landed one jab in the fight. I don't know statistically whether that's accurate or not, but suffice it to say he probably landed less than 10 shots the whole fight.
The fact that we don't know if that's true or not shows you how
much of a domination it was. And so Costa did just enough to allow Izzy to implement his game.
Yeah.
And in the famous words of Conor McGregor, precision beats power.
Yeah, and timing beats speed. The speed part wasn't really a factor because Izzy said that Costa seemed a lot slower than he actually anticipated. He was training for a faster Costa, and I don't know if that has to do with his muscle. Or maybe just Izzy's that much faster than everybody else in the division, because Costa doesn't look like a slow fighter.
No.
He looks like he's a pretty explosive guy. Kind of like I said last week in the breakdown, he's one of those guys like a Robert Whittaker who's going to sprint like a drag race, and then he's going to circle around and kind of catch his breath and then sprint again.
Yeah.
It looked like he never got off the starting line last night.
Not at all. And it wasn't, and Dana White said it perfectly in the press conference. It's not because Costa's not all that.
Yeah.
Costa is a great fighter.
Undefeated.
But Costa's, he relies heavily on power, and he relies heavily on just overwhelming his opponents. But I mentioned it to you when we were watching the build-up, watching him hit pads and do a little work with some of the kickboxers and Muay Thai guys that he brought in for, to get some looks like Izzy may bring to the table. And I said his striking is just rudimentary compared to Izzy's. He's just so many levels below Izzy as far as, and quite frankly, isn't everybody in the UFC. But I said, unless he just comes with just a reckless abandon and clips Izzy, which I don't see happening, because Izzy really does have one of his best attributes is his MMA IQ. Mm-hmm. And he's not going to, and he says it in the press conference, I'm not going to let you rope me into your fight. I know what you're going to try to do. Right. I'm going to stick and circle, stick and circle, stick and circle. I'm going to figure you out, and then I'm going to pick you apart. And boy, did it take him almost no time to figure Costa out. It was a striking clinic. I don't think I've seen any sort of striking clinic in a title fight that I can, in recent memory, that was so dominant.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're training to fight Israel Adesanya, it's damn near impossible to find Izzy 2.0 to train and try kind of get those looks. And a lot of strikers, maybe you would point to a Michael Venom Page or somebody like a Raymond Daniels, but even still, those types of strikers, those really high-level strikers, they all have a different cadence, a different step, a different style that it's not the same. Whereas if you were to fight Khabib, yeah, it might be a good idea to get Khamzat Chimaev on the match with you, because you're going to see some similar things. I don't think anybody really moves quite like Izzy. And Paulo Costa, I mean, he was the right guy, but it just shows you there's a big gap between number 1 champion and number 2 at 185.
Right, which brings me to sort of my next point, and it's almost a breath of fresh air with Izzy, because he's in the era of the champ as started by Conor McGregor. Everybody wants to grab the belt and move up or move down or what have you, and collect as many belts. Izzy's not. Izzy says, the fight with Jon Jones is there, and it will materialize at some point.
Yeah.
But he's not calling out Jan Blachowicz, which he could have done. I mean, Jan had just won the belt. He could call out Jan. He might think that's a good stylistic matchup for him. He didn't do that.
Right.
He said, Jared Cannonier is a good guy. He's a deserving opponent if he can get past Robert Whittaker, and I want to fight him next.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be the Anderson Silva of the division. I want to be the Israel Adesanya of the division.
Yeah.
I don't care about the belt. I care about the bodies that I rack up along the way.
Right.
And so I really think it's a breath of fresh air to see a guy who says, you know what, I'm going to hang tight in my division. I'm going to clean everybody out so that there's no doubt. And then we'll talk about some super fights. We'll pop up and come back. What do you think about the Cannonier fight, and what do you think about him wanting to stay in the division?
I love the Cannonier fight. I'm a big fan of him wanting to stay in the division. I kind of feel like 185 is tailor-made for him, because he weighed in at 184. He played ping pong to cut weight, so he's not a large 185er. He's a tall drink of water, but he's not an overly big guy. Paulo Costa, there was rumors that he was over 225, somewhere in the 230 range before the fight camp for this fight, and that's just massive. He's cutting so much weight, and when you see him at 230, he could probably hit a bodybuilding stage and still have a six-pack. So It's not like he's a big fat guy and then he cuts a bunch of fat, which is kind of easy. He has to bring his body down completely, which is very difficult. Izzy lives right there. I bet you, like you said last night, he probably 193, 195
the most in there.
Yeah, at the most, and he moves so well for that body type. I don't see him possibly getting to 170, but I don't really see the need for him to go up to 205. And Jared Cannonier had always been sending him direct messages. In his 9 fights that he's been in the UFC, and maybe even before, I'm not sure on that, but he'd always congratulate Izzy.
Yeah.
Knowing that, Cannonier was also a heavyweight, light heavyweight, and then was slowly making his way down to middleweight, where I think he's found his home. But he was always sending Izzy direct messages, and some of them Izzy might have seen, some of them he didn't see. But then he realized one day that he had missed a few, and he was like, this guy's just a class act.
Yeah.
He likes my style. I like his style. And it looks like now he's going to be the number 1 contender if he can get past Robert Whittaker. I think he made that promise to Cannonier. I think he's going to keep that promise. And you heard it from Dana, who's the most important of all. He said if he gets past Robert Whittaker, Jared Cannonier, that is, he's going to get a shot.
He gets the fight. And I love that Izzy cares about the rankings. He cares about who the number 1 contender is. There's a guy that the world is saying, the media, whoever is saying, this guy has a legitimate shot to beat me. I want to prove him wrong. I'm going to beat him. And I think that's awesome.
And another cool thing, Izzy, like I said, he had 9 fights in the UFC so far. He has, it's not like he's like way up in the double digits like a Cowboy Cerrone. He's had 9 fights, but damn, are all of those fights top contenders, or if they weren't top contenders back then, now they're top contenders. So it almost, when you go through the rankings at 185, you look at it and you go, well, he beat him. It's like, who are we picking for? Jared Cannonier, obviously the right guy next if he can get past Whittaker. Jack Hermanson is probably right there because we haven't seen him fight. But then you have to jump a few steps down before you see somebody that Izzy hasn't fought and already beat.
Yeah, and I said this after the fight. Izzy said that he has cleared out, I believe, 7 of the top 15. So he's cleared out half of the top 15 already. Right. Some before he was the champ, some now when he has the belt. But the real question is, like, what style can give him some trouble? Because I personally don't think any striker, there's absolutely 0% chance of you beating Israel Adesanya on the feet at 185. He's going to pick you apart. Nobody can beat him. Not Whittaker, who everybody was talking about. Whittaker was this pristine striker, gets starched. Paulo Costa is this pressure striker, gets starched. I mean, Yoel Romero didn't even want to engage, loses the fight. So the question is, what style beats Izzy? And I personally think that it's got to be like if a Khabib of 185 emerges, somebody that just, I'm not even going to try to throw a punch at you. I might throw a jab to set up a takedown, but I'm literally going to be on your legs from bell one till the end of the fight. In my opinion, that's the only way that somebody can challenge Izzy in some reasonable way.
Well, there just happens to be a guy who's a very strong grappler that is basically making a run in 2 divisions right now, which is unheard of, and that's Khamzat Chimaev. He's fought 3 times in the UFC this year. 2 of them were at 185. A lot of people tend to think that he's going to find his home at 170 and kind of make his initial run there. But, I mean, as of right now, if you were to ask me what's his primary weight class, I have to say 185 because he simply just has more fights at 185. Yeah. I'm not one of those people that says that we should throw him in the cage with Izzy right now. But next year, if he keeps doing what he's doing, that seems like it's bound to happen. Yeah. And, one person that I think maybe could jump into the Izzy Adesanya sweepstakes is a Luke Rockhold. And you have to follow me on this because he was the champ at 185, and then he lost his footing, and then he kind of couldn't find his home, went to 205. That didn't work out. He fought, just so happens to be the baddest guy on the planet at 205. Right. And it didn't work out his way, but he was in that fight until he was unconscious. So maybe just how people move a division to find a fresh coat of paint, maybe if you go up and experiment something and it doesn't work out, and then the layout of your original division changes so much, it's almost like another fresh coat of paint. And I don't know, maybe Luke Rockhold is too long in the tooth for the UFC to want to give him a title, but I think if he can get past a couple of guys, and I think he's got some injuries he's dealing with right now, but if he can get past a couple of people, he's got the striking. He's a damn good striker. I don't think he's as good as Izzy, but he's got the grappling too. And a lot of people said,
and he's got the name.
He's got the name.
He was the former champ. So
he's a big body, and I think the Luke Rockhold that we saw with the UFC title right before the Michael Bisping fight could have been the most skilled 185er of all time. And if he can get back to those ways, that could be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Izzy, one thing we know about Izzy is he wants to build his legacy off of the who's who. And Luke Rockhold, is, even though he's not performing to that level right now, he's still on the who's who list. Yeah. But I think it's going to take, and I'm not one that's ready, and you know how hot I am on Khamzat Chimaev. I'm not one to say that he needs to be in there with Izzy right now. We need to see him beat a couple of top 10 guys, but that style of fighting, I think, is the only thing, and I'm not even willing to say that it's going to get you past Izzy, but I'm saying it's the only thing that I think renders you a chance of getting past Izzy. There's 0% chance that you're going to stand and trade with Israel Adesanya and win the fight.
Yeah, one thing I really like that Israel Adesanya is doing is he's obviously a very fun fighter to watch. He's highlight reels in every single fight. He's just got the tapes for his highlights are just endless. But he's also not willing to just engage to put on a show for the fans. He's willing to chill and put on a clinic for people. And that's how his highlight reel kind of winds up being so lengthy. He's very good at what he does, but he's not willing to succumb to the pressure and just put on a show if his opponent, like Yoel Romero, isn't engaging, or if Paulo Costa kind of comes with that same style and doesn't really, play and fall into his traps, or doesn't do what Izzy thinks he's going to do, he doesn't abandon ship. And I think that's so cool, and it's so mature IQ-wise that Izzy does that.
So last night, Dana White said something that was very interesting to me. He said that the live weigh-ins for Costa Adesanya, and again, who the dance partner is makes a difference, and Costa was a great dance partner in name, even though it didn't end up being a good dance partner in the cage. But Dana said that the live weigh-ins dwarfed the Khabib-Conor live weigh-ins. Yeah. One, do you believe that's true? And two, if you do believe it's true, is Israel Adesanya, has he eclipsed Khabib? Let's assume Conor's retired. Has he eclipsed Khabib as the biggest name in the sport right now?
No, I don't think so. I think he's right there. He's the 1A, but I think Khabib, he has that Muslim following behind him. He's got Russia behind him. And he's obviously got a mega matchup coming up. So we might have to check those numbers after him and Gaethje face off. I tend to think that there was more on the line and a lot of eyes on the Conor Khabib matchup. There was so much going. I mean, the buildup from the dolly throw to, Conor getting on a private jet and coming to find Khabib. There was a lot going on there, and I think it made mainstream news, and it was a trending topic for better or for worse. It was what was in the news. Izzy is purely pulling these for his fight style and his not really much his antics, but more of his just pure skill alone, which is something it's really impressive. I think he's pulling a lot of people that maybe weren't MMA fans or fight fans into the sport, and I think he's
a lot of gamers too,
pulling them from the gamer scene and kind of from the he's really into anime, he's really into gaming, and that industry they're a lot of that stuff. If you go into the biggest games in the world, you go into the biggest anime shows, it has to do with fighting and overcoming adversity, and there's these storylines that these guys just they obsess over, and he kind of pays homage to them in so many different ways with cool little things that he does. You don't even know it. He doesn't even say anything about it, but if you know, you know. And I think the gaming industry, which is probably bigger than any other industry right now, is really behind Izzy.
Yeah, I think so. And, one of the cool things is, and we know a lot of the people that are involved in the gaming industry, Izzy kind of relayed a message to them last night, which is a lot of them deal with bullying and things like that. And he said, I'm going to be the nerd gamer guy that's going to stand up to the bully. Mm-hmm. And I think that message resonates with a lot of people. And so I think he's going to gain a lot of fans. I'm not ready to say he's transcended into pop culture yet, but I think one more win like that, and Israel Adesanya is a name that somebody at the mall that you run into has heard of.
Yeah, and he also just signed a deal with Puma, so which is
major.
It's a major, and they're a big international company. Yeah. So I also think that Izzy, his name is growing worldwide, not just in one division or small area of the world. He's growing at kind of all encompassing.
And Nigeria is a very big country. Yeah. And even though he lives in New Zealand now, he's got a major Nigerian following. I think he's going to be the one that brings the first UFC card to Africa. And I really think he headlines that first card. I don't think it happens next year, but maybe the year after that.
With a co-main event of Kamaru Usman. Africa definitely has and Francis Ngannou. How can we forget? Yeah. I think.
You could put together just a bang up card. Yeah, and that could potentially be 3 title fights on the line, depending on how things shake out.
Africa has a lot to be proud of right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So moving into the co-main event, oh my goodness, I know we both picked Dominick Reyes, and I think for good reason. But boy, were we wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Dominick Reyes standing there toe-to-toe with Jan Blachowicz. He's a big guy. Yeah. Jan Blachowicz, you think of him, you go, oh, that's a Polish power monster. He's just a big body. You stand next to him, he's going to dwarf you. Dominick Reyes looked like he was, several inches bigger and looked like he was
I was
even
truly
thicker.
surprised by that.
Yeah, I was too. You always think of these guys as kind of in the same size, they're really close in size, but Dominick Reyes is a big body. And if you go back to last week, I said that if this wasn't a vacant title, my money would be on Jan Blachowicz getting a knockout, because there was just, if he was going in to fight Dominick Reyes for Dominick's belt, but the fact that it was vacant made me lean towards this is probably going to go the distance, because they both know they're this close to the belt, and they're going to play it safe. And first round, we watched it, and you go, I think your prediction might be right. Second round, it was a turn of events.
It was over. Yeah, and I think that your assessment there was a pretty well thought out assessment, because if you have a challenger coming up to take the belt, you have a bit of that go for broke mentality, and I've got to just go, if I got to really beat the champ. Right. Whereas if you have a vacant belt and both guys are coming in, they're both going to want to be cautious and edge out the win. But not Blachowicz. Blachowicz, he kind of, there was a little bit of a feeling out period in the first round. And then, Blachowicz was putting those punch combinations together really well, just right in boxing range, leading with the hook sometimes, cutting through the guard. And ultimately, I think it was a little bit of like a modified kind of straight punch with a little bit of a hook turn to it that just put Dominick Reyes on wobble. And, my goodness. And Dominick said after the fight that, he was kind of afraid, or not necessarily afraid is maybe not the right word, but just a little shy to pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that might have been?
I think the Polish power is real. I think he realized just the kind of monster he was in there with, and all you have to do to see that, if you're strong at kicking, if you're strong at punching, you're generally strong at the other one too. Yeah. And it doesn't take. I'm colorblind. It doesn't take a perfect set of eyes to see the bruising that he was doing to Dominick Reyes' ribs early in the fight. I mean, you pointed it out to me, and you go, look at his ribs. And like I said, I have a hard time seeing red on somebody's body, and especially tan. I could probably see it on Paul Felder, but like a Dominick Reyes, it was hard to. But that one was wide open, and I think he realized early on that if he can kick me like that, and I'm feeling it, he can damn sure punch me like that too. And it made him kind of a little bit timid. I thought that Jan Blachowicz fought a perfect fight. He was very calm. And he started to pick apart the legs. When he noticed it was affecting Dominick Reyes a little bit, then he would bring him up. And even Jon Jones, the former champ, the guy who left that title, tweeted, and we watched it. We've said it almost the same time he tweeted it, that body kick is open. He said something along those lines.
Kick to the body's there all day or something like that.
I'm missing up the quote a little bit, but that's what he said. And Jan Blachowicz clearly saw that same thing. And very impressed with his performance.
Yeah, I thought that was excellent. And so, John tweeted last night in typical John fashion. Yeah. Would anybody be mad if I went back down and got my belt real quick? Mm-hmm. And like I was telling you after the fight, I said, Jan doesn't really need to call anybody out here. So let's see what he does, because he's the new champ. The division is so fresh right now. There's really no name that would just, we got to have that right now. And John's up at heavyweight. But you know what? He called out Jon Jones, said, "Where you at? I'm waiting for you." Hard to deny that he could contend with Jon after a performance like that. I mean, a lot of people, you were there at the Reyes-Jones fight, and you thought Dominick won, as well as the rest of the Toyota Center. So I don't know. Who do you want to see next for Jan?
That's a very very cool thing that he did. You want to call out the baddest dude in the world that's ever done the sport. And he just left your division for another division, just because he got tired of winning so much. But it shows the kind of character that Jan is. He didn't get in this sport to just take a vacant title and then beat up some people. He wants to fight the best of the best, and that's what I love about this sport so much. He's a lot of boxers. We always tie it back to boxing because it's easy to compare the two sports. Boxers will avoid hard fights all day long, and then all career long, really. And the promoters will too. They're like, no, why would we put you in? We got another guy who just finished sweeping the floors, and he'd love to fight you. We'll pay him. Yeah. And Jan Blachowicz wants to fight Jon Jones. I would love to see that fight. Now, there's more fights at heavyweight that I'd like Jon Jones to get into. But if there's a little bit of a hold up over there, why not? Why not come back down to 205? Yeah. I have a feeling his body hasn't grown too much in the short time that he's been out of the division. I think that would be a fun one. And Jan Blachowicz is clearly got out of that fight unscathed, so we could have a Jan versus Jon.
Yeah, I'm not too crazy about it. I'm not going to be mad at it if they make it. I'll watch it, obviously. But the thing is that light heavyweight is exciting again. It just got a fresh coat of paint. You just saw two warriors go at it. Jan Blachowicz is the champ now. He's 37 years old. Jon held the title for almost a decade. Yeah. Jan's not going to be the champion at 47. So we're going to see some changing of the guards and some exciting matchups and maybe some trilogies, some rematches or whatever.
Right.
I would rather see Jon stay at heavyweight, see if he can get the belt there, and then maybe come back down and do an Adesanya. Maybe Adesanya comes up at some point and tries his luck against Jan. There's more exciting things, I think, at light heavyweight, and I don't even really have a name to propose right now. I would just have to look at the rankings and say, who's not scheduled. And I know they're talking about Glover Teixeira.
And Thiago Santos?
Yes, Thiago Santos. I mean, how could you deny him? Yeah. There was an argument that a lot of people thought he beat Jon Jones too. So
with two bad knees.
Exactly. I did not think. I thought Jon lost the Reyes fight. I do think he won the Santos fight, but nevertheless, I think that there's some really interesting matchups there, and I hope that Jon stays true to his word and competes at heavyweight for a little while, and then comes down for a mega fight. But Yeah, I would say put him in there with the winner of Teixeira and Santos.
Yeah, and if Jon does, I think it would be kind of a cool thing. I think the build up, the promotion, all of the things that they could do to sell that fight would be cool. Jon gives up the belt. Somebody goes and takes it a month after that. And then now we get to see, if you weren't a fight fan a decade ago, you didn't see Jon Jones as a contender. Yep. Now you get to see hungry Jon Jones as a contender again. That's cool to me. But we also get that at heavyweight because he's not the champ right now. I think he could slide into a title fight in either division immediately. But I'm very interested to see what Jon does next and what Jan does next.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that was really what a great way to kick off this next, I think it's 5 or 6 weekends of Fight Island.
Yeah, man, that was a killer card, and there were some decisions and things like that, but that the top heavy main and co-main event, they delivered in spades.
Absolutely. Guys, let us know what you think about that co-main event. Jan Blachowicz, he's the new champ. Izzy cemented himself as the absolute most dominant striker in the game right now. Let us know in the comments who you want to see both guys fight next. And then what does Dominick Reyes do from here? And what do you want to see Paulo Costa do? Should he bump up to light heavyweight? There's an interesting thought.
Oh, yeah.
Let us know in the comments, guys. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and check us out where you listen to podcasts.
See you next time.
Thanks.